Hello and welcome to episode 131 of RPG Fans Retro Encounter, the podcast where week to week any topic is game. We sometimes literally plan it a few days before, sometimes months in advance. But today I'm joined by one of the Retro Encounter originals, Chris Gebauer.
Hi man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've had a big weekend, but that's neither here nor there. Chris, we're in the middle of Zelda month, a project that's been a little while in the making for Retro Encounter. 4 Zelda-themed episodes in a row. Last week you heard us talk about our favorite Zelda game, and if you want to find out what Retro Encounter's official favorite Zelda game is, I suggest you listen to the episode. But today we're going to discuss a specific Zelda title that did not win that illustrious award last week, sadly. Reverse spoilers, I guess.
This eliminates one of many choices.
Sure. If you're listening out of order, then I apologize for the one tiny 1/18th spoiler. But yeah, we're going to talk about The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening today. It's a personal Zelda favorite of mine, and I specifically wanted to do an episode about this for Zelda Month, in part because it's a sentimental favorite, but also because it came out 25 years ago, and I think the official release date was in the summer, so we're not accurate to its anniversary to the month. But I thought it was as good a time as any to celebrate either the game's 25th anniversary or the GB Color version's 20th anniversary.
I didn't realize it was actually that long.
Yeah,
I somehow thought it came out
1993.
later. Oh, that makes so much more sense. Okay. Because, you said this was a personal favorite of yours. This was my first Zelda, and it was, when this came out, when my brother's copy, I guess I was 3-4 years old. So I had a lot of trouble with this game when I was a kid, but I loved it dearly.
As did I. I guess it came out when I was 7, because I'm a little older than you are, but I was playing it in the age 9, 10, 11 range. And I truly don't know if this was my first Zelda or not, because I did have a Game Boy before any home console, but I think I was playing Link's Awakening and the original Legend of Zelda around the same time.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I got consoles late, so I had an NES when the Super Nintendo was out. But I
see. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I struggled with both this game and with the original Legend of Zelda. I eventually did finish Link's Awakening after some struggle, which we'll get. I think we struggled around the same part of the game. I think we'll talk about that struggle a little bit later, but I truly do not know if this or the first Legend of Zelda was my first, but it was definitely one of those two, and this is the first one I finished. In fact, it was my love of this game that caused me to seek out A Link to the Past when I eventually got a Super Nintendo around age 9 or 10, when I was in, which would have been like 1995, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I got consoles late for the most part, growing up. But Chris, this is the 4th Legend of Zelda game. The team that worked on it was most of the same people that worked on A Link to the Past. It originally began life as a Game Boy port of A Link to the Past, but they abandoned that pretty early on, and it sort of spun into its own thing. And the three people that were chiefly behind its design and writing are, okay, I'm going to mess up some Japanese names, so bear with me.
Give it your best shot.
Yep, okay. We have the story planner Yoshiaki Koizumi, the scriptwriter Kensuke Tanabe, and the game director Takashi Tezuka. And those 3 guys are all still with Nintendo. Tezuka's last project was being a producer for ARMS last year, and all 3 of those guys worked on both A Link to the Past and this game, and were chiefly responsible for the ways that the weird directions that this game went in its story design and gameplay design.
Such a cool little tidbit, isn't that just great? You gotta love when companies can still have employees for that long of a tenure and still want to be involved.
Yeah, all 3 of these guys worked on Nintendo games in the 80s and are probably less involved in a sort of direction or coding level at Nintendo nowadays. But all
now
3
they're major producers and executives.
Yeah, they're all producers or supervisors for recent games. and none of them quite have the same career either. They like the I don't know if there was a single game that all three of them worked on after this. I don't feel like checking Wikipedia or IMDb for that level of research, but. This is a weird, cool little Nintendo thing for a lot of reasons.
Cool.
For a lot of reasons, but I don't want to go through the game's story in a linear way, and listeners are going to spoil the hell out of the story as we go. So, like, if you want to avoid spoilers, just forget it. Just pick another episode. But so, Chris, tell me one thing that you think sticks out about Link's Awakening that's really worth discussing right now.
Novelty charm. There's so much random stuff in this game that always made me... That when I first discovered it as a kid, and even playing it again now for the first time in about, 18 to 20 years.
Oh, it's been that long.
Yeah, I beat it when I was... No, I guess a little bit less than that, so like 18 years. I beat it when I was like 9 or 10. And then, never played it again since, because when I was younger, whenever we would get a new console, my mom would always basically say, well, then we could give away your other stuff. You don't need it anymore.
I mean, my philosophy was almost the opposite. I'm a big pack rat with video games, in part because my parents told me that
I am now.
Well, part of the deal was when I was a kid, my parents said that any video games buying would be from me and my own work and allowance. Like they maybe a Christmas present now and then, but the video game collection was mine, and I could buy or sell them,
smart.
But they wouldn't, buy stuff for me anymore.
Totally.
So I kept most of my games. I sold a lot of my Game Boy games when I was about 20, because I knew there were some I was never going to play again. But I kept Link's Awakening. I kept Link's Awakening and I've played that game probably at least 4 or 5 times. I don't know exactly how many, but I recently replayed it for this podcast in the January-February range. But you're right. This game has a lot of weird, unique notes to it that really haven't been present in any Zelda game since. I mean, there's Goombas.
There's yes. First and foremost, there's a lot of universe-breaking, like just Nintendo crossover stuff. There are enemies that you fight that are Goombas, Piranha Plants, Cheep Cheeps, the Octopi from. I'm not going to say 100% those are the Mario ones, but they look pretty similar. You have Kirby enemies in the 7th dungeon. I can't remember if they're also in the 8th. But, yeah, there's the Yoshi doll, which is the first item you need for the trade sequence quest.
Yeah, there's also no Princess Zelda in this game. The game does not take place in Hyrule, which is...
by the way, I will say this. When you're a really young kid, as in just learning how to read, about 4 or 5 years old, playing this game, and it's called Legend of Zelda, and the whole game outside of the opening, when you're waking up, the guy's like, Zelda? I have no idea who you're talking about. It's just never mentioned again.
And that the item trading side quest that you mentioned has one item that's I believe a letter, and the photo in the letter is of Princess Toadstool, not Zelda.
Yes.
So it has Mario's princess, but not Zelda's princess in this.
Yeah, and the Yoshi doll, the writing for it is fantastic, which is like, it's a Yoshi doll. He's getting so popular. This I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the line that's important is he's showing up in all sorts of games now. You're just like, what? It's the best. It's just so bizarre. It just the whole game now, especially looking back, but even as a kid, it just felt so weirdly aware of itself. Which, for better or worse, I don't think they intended it as much as because I've heard that a lot of those enemies and whatnot came about from them just fooling around. However, it does kind of play into what ends up being the ending of the game, which is this idea of it all being a dream of a fish. So it actually kind of allows for all this weird stuff to exist together, which I'm sure is how a lot of game design, story elements end up later. I'm sure it's just like, well, we can explain anything away afterwards because it's all a dream, but it allows for these just strange choices that you don't see ever again. And that's why, and I assume why you feel the same as well, that it's such a special little Zelda game.
The dream thing works pretty well in this game. That kind of ending where, it was all a dream, which you could call the one of the Bob Newhart shows ended in a weird dream sequence. Mario 2 ends in it was all a dream kind of ending. Mm-hmm. You could maybe extend that to the film version of The Wizard of Oz even, but that story device is like a lot of the time I would consider it lazy or a cop out, but for this it sort of works because they tease it for a while.
Hmm.
It becomes clear that that you're in a dream and fighting the nightmares of a strange being around the game's midpoint, maybe around the dungeon 5 or 6 range, and
Do you mean
and
with the mural, or just in terms of how things are unfolding?
I think
'Cause I always felt like I
like,
knew way ahead of the game, letting you know.
it's teased early. At least for a while, I think you truly believe that you're stranded on an island. But then when you start talking to denizens, they'll say, "Wait, outside the island? What do you mean? What does outside the island mean? You're making my head hurt, man." And then around the time you find the mural in the ruins, which describes what the windfish
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
and
totally.
one of the dungeon bosses, as you defeat them, it's either the fifth or sixth dungeon. They say, "Hey, look, once you wake the windfish, then everything's over.
Yeah,
All of us will
everything's over.
stop existing." And it's like,
Yeah,
oh man, that's serious. I think that's the face dungeon guy.
I think it is 7.
Yeah, no, that's 6.
Oh, you mean the actual face in the floor? Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, then it's 6.
Yeah, right. But there's probably I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly what every boss says.
no, but yeah, they start to reference it again and again from that point on, and that's the dungeon. I think after the mural. I think 5 is the mural. I think 5 or 6. Either way, point is, you're right. It's around the midpoint.
yeah, the fifth dungeon is the catfish maw, and the sixth dungeon is the face dungeon, which is in the ruins. And I think you visit the ruins
That's in the shrine,
in
right?
between 5 and 6.
Yep.
Yeah,
You're
sorry,
right.
yeah. Face Shrine. You're right. This game has a lot of weird, unique Nintendo crossover things in it. It goes some really wacky places.
Hmm.
I think maybe the strangest Nintendo crossover bit, personally, is the giant frog that teaches you the Song of Life
Yeah,
is the boss of the Doki Doki Panic Mario 2 game.
it's just
So it's
so.
like who wanted that guy back? But here he is.
But there he is. Yeah, I mean the fact that the writing for when you get Marin to sing to the walrus, and it's like now's your chance. Like, just I feel like the localization team. I am sure that a lot of the jokes were in the original, but I feel like the localization team were given a lot of leeway to have a lot of fun with this game. Like, I love the
Really.
fact that every time you talk to the kids, they're like, why are you asking me? I'm just a kid.
Mhm.
What do you mean, is this all a dream and maybe we don't exist? That's making my head hurt, mister. Stop
Well, I mean,
asking me.
I feel for localizers of games from the '90s and onward because basically they had to fit English text within the same number of
Tiny.
characters as the
Yeah.
Japanese text. So a lot of the time, like nonsense localizations were forced a little bit. But I think the localization of this game is pretty good. 'Cause
Yeah. I mean,
I noticed how clever it was. I mean, replaying it recently.
yeah, it's so smart. It's so much fun. The self-awareness, especially now having not played it for so long, it's also kind of off-putting in certain ways in comparison to most other Zelda games. It's in a cool way. It's just there's something odd in everything about that game and that island because it's just a little bit stranger than every other Zelda game. Outside of maybe Majora's Mask. But even then, there's just an oddness to that island and how also because it had to be fit on a little Game Boy, cart, it's not huge. So everything feels very intimate and it's not too hard to get from place A to place B.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I mentioned this before. It was originally envisioned as a port of
Yeah,
Link to
port.
the Past, but it eventually carved out its own niche. It does the thing where sort of everything is. I mean, the Game Boy had limited buttons, of course, but everything had to be done on the A and B buttons. So equipping all of your items to either A or B and using them in tandem in certain ways was key to gameplay. I mean, maybe I'm bearing the lead here. This is the first Zelda game that lets you jump.
Yeah, with the rock feather, which is the coolest thing.
The Rock's
And if
Feathers,
you watch,
one of the all-time great Zelda items.
yeah, and if you watch speed runs, it's also used for breaking dungeons and
Oh,
doing a lot of fun stuff.
yeah, I'm sure there's weird glitches you can do with the Rock's Feather, but even like combining
But
the
yeah,
Rock's Feather with
with the Pegasus boots,
yeah,
doing the long jump.
yep, and just a lot of and even using it just to dodge enemy attacks, which
Mhm.
worked for some but not all attacks, was really clever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fact that you know, especially with the Rock's Feather, you can do such bizarre things. I mean, like you said, jumping over enemies is fantastic. You can do really cool with certain boss fights. Actually, what always felt like action to me when I was younger. Felt like I was the coolest person in the world because you would jump over, like you said, an attack and then get your hits in and be like, wow, I just felt like a ninja. There was just a weird mobility because of the feather that just felt so fun.
Yeah, and I mean, every Zelda game has sort of a progression of items that you get that increase sort of your arsenal and your suite of actions that you can do. I mean, it's influential for almost every modern action game in that way. I mean, the Zelda series in general. But the items that you get in Link's Awakening are a little weird for Zelda. I mean, because the only games where Zelda has this sort of jumping items are the Game Boy ones until you get very very recent. Like Breath of the Wild has a jump move in it. Like some modern Zelda games do go vertical in a lot of ways that the Game Boy games couldn't, but just being able to jump when Zelda was always this sort of grid-based 2D game was a bit of a mind blow.
It was awesome. The fact that you could do bomb arrows, which I didn't know for years, that to me was one of the coolest things in the world of mixing both items in each slot. Like I didn't think that was something you could do. You always had to do one or the other.
I think bomb arrows are optional in this game. You can
Yeah, you never have to use them ever. But that was one of the. I don't even think they're. And this is not a quote, but I remember always hearing that they weren't supposed to be a thing. It was just one of those things that the game, the way it was made, let you do them at the same time. But because like you said, there is actually nothing in the game that requires that.
I think it's probably something that the designers did put in the game when they were experimenting with.
But usually that stuff gets taken out afterwards.
Or maybe it was even a late addition. When I was reading some developer background on this game, they do. I guess roll over several ideas that they wanted in A Link to the Past but couldn't implement. Like having a giant egg on top of a mountain was something that one of the writers or designers really liked and sort of wanted in A Link to the Past but never happened. And also...
just as an idea, that was just like a concept they liked?
It was a visual idea that he liked a lot, and it never happened in The Links to the Past, so when he, I think, had a little bit more creative control with this game, he got to make it a central part of the game. And,
for sure.
And also the dungeon where you collapse one floor to change the nature and layout of the dungeon was something they wanted in A Link to the Past. But ended up
my least favorite dungeon. I hate those columns.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the dungeons right now because it's a pattern that has repeated in several in all of the Game Boy Zelda games and several of them in general. Basically, 8 dungeons that you're intended to complete in sequence. And for the 3 Game Boy Zeldas, you really have to do those dungeons in order, which is a change from somehow some Zelda games work because. Those 3 Zelda games in general have a bit of a Metroidvania thing where you unlock more of the map with each dungeon key item, and you maybe there's exceptions, but I think for the 2 Oracle games and for Link's Awakening, you pretty much have to either finish the dungeons in a specific order or at least get the item from the previous dungeon before you can unlock the next one. I
can only speak to Link's Awakening, so I can't.
You can't? Oh, so you don't even know about the Rock's Cape?
No, I don't.
Okay. The Rock's Feather returns in both of the Zelda Oracle games, which are two Game Boy Color games from 1999 or 2000.
I remember them. I just never got to play them.
Right, and one of them has the Rock's Cape, which is basically a double jump Rock's Feather.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you should totally play them.
It's amazing.
I always
heard they were great.
All 3 of the Game Boy Color Zelda games, which are the DX version of Link's Awakening and the 2 Oracle games, you can get them on 3DS. I think they're about $6, $7, $8 in that range, and they go on sale maybe once a year or so. I got both of the Oracle games on my 3DS and regrettably missed a sale for Link's Awakening. So when I replayed this, it was on my ancient GBA SP. With the Link's Awakening DX cart, but you can get all 3 of those Game Boy Color games on your 3DS, and I like them a lot, so I highly recommend that. But
that's how I played Link's Awakening DX.
Oh, cool! On your 3DS?
On my 3DS.
Nice.
Exactly what happened. Yeah, they're great. I mean, you're right. They look great and play incredibly well on the 3DS.
Yeah, well, at least the two, I'm in the middle of a Oracle of Seasons playthrough right now. I haven't really tried Ages yet because maybe you know this, maybe you didn't. I apologize if I'm over explaining, but the two Oracle games have a connected storyline. So once you complete
Yeah,
one,
can't you do like a yeah?
yeah, you can either you can send a code to the other one to make the story a little different, and then fight a sort of game spanning final boss at the end of the second one.
God, it's so cool.
Yeah, and also you can send and also using codes you can send items and upgraded versions of existing items from the first game to the second game if you're playing a linked game.
It's more nuanced than I thought.
I think I mentioned this in the favorite Zelda episode last week, so I apologize, listeners, if this is me repeating myself. But
You're welcome. You're relearning things.
sure. I had a friend who I'm actually still friends with. This isn't a long forgotten person or anything, and she may return in this episode. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But the Oracle games came out when I was in middle school, and her last name also began with S. So we were in the same homeroom together. And when they came out, we were both big Zelda fans. We were both big Game Boy fans. She only had an NES and a Game Boy. I don't think she has a system newer than a DS, like today. But so each of us planned to get one of those Oracle games. I got Seasons and she got Ages, and we played through them, aware that there was a linked capability.
Yep.
And figuring it out as you know as it was happening, and then we traded games, played and then played the linked version, so each of us could experience
Right.
the whole story. And eventually, I did get my own copy of Oracle of Ages, and we swapped back. There was never any difficulty with that. But the first time I played those Oracle Zelda Game Boy Color games, it was with a friend, and we talked about them every day in middle school, and eventually traded copies to get our own files there. It was a lot of fun, and I have a lot of nostalgia for playing them and talking about them with her. But okay, rolling all of this back a little bit, Eagle's Tower, the seventh
Yes.
dungeon in the game. I struggled with this so much as a kid. Again, I think I played this a few years after Link's Awakening came out, so I was probably in the 8, 9, 10 age range. And I didn't have that much difficulty with the game until Eagle's Tower. Well, this game gets challenging sometimes, so I'm not going to say it's an easy peasy Game Boy game, but it was so I had a reason. I feel that the difficulty curve for 8-year-old me was reasonable at least until hitting Eagle's Tower, which I just could not figure out. It was I was
Knocking down those columns.
yeah, the gimmick of there is in the on the second floor of the dungeon. There's this big iron ball and 4 columns, and you have to carry the iron ball around that floor and destroy the columns by throwing the ball at it. And getting to them is weird. There's some walls you got to bomb and some blocks you have to push and some enemies you have to clear, and then get to a different part of the same room in less than 5 steps, so the enemies won't reappear. It gets weird. But
Yes.
I couldn't figure out. I think it was the third pillar or the last pillar that I struggled with. And that same friend that I played the Oracle games with, she is the one that told me how to beat that game. I started to
Oh.
beat that dungeon. When I moved to a new area and went to a new school and became friends with her, she told me a couple hints. Or maybe I brought out my Game Boy and she said, "Oh, you have," and showed it to her and said, "Oh, you have to do this next," kind of thing. I don't remember exactly how it went, but it was her guidance that helped me beat the Eagle's Tower, and then eventually finish the game shortly after. I mean, the Turtle Rock, the eighth dungeon, is also a pretty tough one, but I figured that one out on my own. It was I needed the hump I had to get over was Eagle's Tower, and then the rest of the game, happened without a major incident. But you had a similar thing, right? But I was stuck at that Eagle's Tower before I moved to the new city, for probably at least a year. I don't know exactly how long it would. I mean, my perfect I don't have a perfect memory of my childhood year to year.
Oh, for sure. Look, this is what's weird is when I was stuck on Link's Awakening was when I was really, really young. So let's say between the ages of like 4 was when I was playing sometimes on my brother's copy, and then when I was allowed to finally really kind of play on my own, I was given my own cart, and so I was like 6, 5. And for the longest time, what I was stuck on is, and my brother was as well, and it's because we never really used the telephone booths for hints. We didn't realize that's what that was.
Oh, right.
And so,
The
often.
oh, right. I
Yeah,
forgot.
so on the
There's
island
a
are phone booths
there's
that give
phone
you
booths,
hints.
and you can talk to the guy who you
This old
speak to
man
with the phone. Yeah,
who is
an old man.
too shy to speak to you in person and will tell you, please don't talk to me, go outside to the phone.
And there's a phone booth like 2 spaces away from his house, and if you talk to him there, it's fine. But if you talk to him at his house, he's not helpful at all.
But yeah, so those hints are there because there's a lot of obtuse stuff in the game. It'll give you sometimes with the owl, who makes appearances in other Zelda games. But the owl who comes to be like, okay, this is the next shrine or the next place you have to go to. This is going to be where the next dungeon is. He'll tell you a location. But usually when we were, kids, we weren't really paying attention to a lot of that stuff. And when we knew we had to go to the swamp with
Don't ask me, I'm just a kid.
Yeah, well, all that stuff, exactly. Why can animals talk? Don't ask me, I'm just a rabbit.
Yeah,
the
weird
Bow Wow
talking about weird
to
stuff.
That second dungeon took me forever to figure out as a kid.
Talking about games, excuse me. Talking about how this game is weird and unique among Zelda games. How about that animal village? Just a village full of animals that are friendly with humans. Humans visit the animal village. Animals can visit the human village.
They love Marin because she sings to them and entrances them.
Who doesn't love Marin? I'm pretty sure Link has the hots for Marin.
I don't think so because there's that hilarious, wonderful scene on the beach, which I adore because she's flirting with him, and he's just like, "I need to take you to a dungeon."
I think there's music.
I'm trying to talk about the finer points of life and wishing for something greater, even if it means your own demise, potentially. And he's just like, you're the key to the next dungeon. Come with me.
Yeah, Marin is a special character, I think. She is the only person who's has a self-awareness of that there's something beyond the island and
that there could be something else beyond the island.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she's a figment of a sort of supreme being or some kind of the figment of its imagination, and she has these ideas.
Telepathic creature.
Yeah, this is going deep. She's like a dream of a dream who has her own dreams, and
yeah, pretty much.
And I think there's mutual interest between Link and Marin.
But, I know. I'm being
but by then I think Link. Yeah, but by then I think Link is already sort of suspicious that none of this is real, and he's a quest-focused individual. All of the Links.
He's very goal-oriented. Yes.
All of the Links over the years are pretty goal-oriented,
yes,
and many of the Links over the years have love interests practically trying to jump him, but he doesn't show much interest in return.
No. And in fact, but again, we joked about it before, but picking her up, and then it says, you just got Marin. Maybe now's your chance. Yeah.
You got Marin.
And it's the same victory, awesome, intense music as when you get your sword at the beginning of the game. Like, this is some super special moment.
Hey, it is a super special moment. You should be able to equip Marin. She follows you, but she doesn't join your item screen, which is a little disappointing.
No, she doesn't. Yeah, the ocarina, to me, was always such a cool, weird thing in this game.
Mm-hmm, right.
When Ocarina of Time came out, because that was then the second game, the Zelda game I played. I was always like, "Oh my god, it's the same thing from the Game Boy game. It was there first."
And there is an ocarina in a Link to the Past, but they call it a flute, which is a weird choice because it's definitely an ocarina.
And that's a game I only played recently for the first time.
Oh, really? Wow.
That was one I missed as a kid. We had an SNES, but only a few games. We didn't really get a lot of games.
I think I played A Link to the Past 4th, because I played the first Legend of Zelda and Link's Awakening around the same time. Then I rented Zelda 2. I never owned that game, but did not get very far. And when I got a Super Nintendo, when I got a Super Nintendo, I was very interested in getting A Link to the Past, and I did get it and did love it. Link to the Past is awesome, but. And I haven't replayed Link to the Past in a long time, but I'm thinking of doing it because I have a shiny new Super Nintendo Classic, and it is on that.
Yeah.
So
I will say it is delightfully hard.
A Link to the Past is not the easiest.
Because I never played it before, so I don't know where to go.
Oh, did you want any help?
I will say playing it through. Well, no, because I did beat it, but thank you, much appreciated. If I needed the help, I would definitely be asking for it quietly.
Sure.
No, totally. It was so easy. But yeah, I have to say I was shocked at how little that game also tells you what to do. You know, we get it's a cliche that people say a lot nowadays, but there is truth to it that with the tutorial nature of games now, and very much the it's clear where to go most of the time, uh, nature of game design and philosophy right now to appeal to a very huge audience means you don't get to play many games where they kind of just let you go. And that
Yeah,
was again one of the big selling points to Breath of the Wild. It's why people love the Souls games. It's why a lot of stuff has become popular over the last few years is a return to that philosophy. But it was kind of cool playing both in even going through Link's Awakening again now. Like I mentioned before, forgetting the whole thing about the chicken.
oh yeah,
And it was just like, what am I supposed to do now?
in
I
between
see the key. How do I get there?
in between the sixth and seventh dungeons, um, you have to get the third song in
The
your
legendary
ocarina.
blue chicken.
You have to. Well, no, it's not a blue chicken.
It is in the DX.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't remember that. But
For
anyway,
no reason, it's blue. I don't get it.
but you have to get the third. You have to get the Song of Life from the giant frog and spend a bunch of rubies to get it. I think probably like 300 or 400 or something.
Is that, yeah, 300.
Then play that song in front of the windmill in town, and it will explode. And no, it won't explode. You push it to
You
the
push
side,
it over. Yeah.
and then go into a small dungeon, and then play the song in front of the bones, and then the flying rooster will revive, and you can use that to float over
A
along.
huge chasm, basically.
Exactly. But the only way to know that is if you can find out parts of that from a phone booth. He'll give you some hints towards that. And there's a house full of chickens in the mountains where the guy will tell you about the legend of the flying rooster. But in general, you're right. Generally, if you refer to a game as handholdy, that's not a positive statement. Like people don't want to have every single part of a game expressly presented in front of them, unless it's maybe a visual novel or something.
Totally.
But in general, the I don't know how recent we can call this because I mean Demon Souls came out 9 years ago, but
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
It still blows my mind.
yeah, but there's something appealing about being dropped into a sandbox or dropped into a sort of a game and being able to continue in a non-linear manner with little direction.
Yep.
Breath of the Wild does a really good job of it because they give you carrots at the end of sticks to follow. And
Very clear paths you could take in terms of what to chase, but a freedom of how to go about it.
yeah, and also they reward you for discovering almost anything new in that game. In A Link to the Past, I don't remember it being that hard because if you just check your map, it'll always tell you the next thing to go to.
For me it was always the warps because you don't see where the warps are.
Oh, okay.
It was just figuring out where they were. That was what was hard.
Also,
it wasn't
I
about
think
difficulty of actually like this is a hard game to play.
I
It just
think
required
the ocarina might be optional in Link to the Past. Do you need it for anything? Wait, no. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry, I lied. You needed to get to one of the dungeons in the in the Dark World.
God, I don't even remember.
You do, yeah. There's a war for the swamp dungeon in the second half of the game.
It's a bad thing if I don't remember.
Yeah, and only to I think you need the flute to get there. But anyway, we're not talking about Link to the Past. This is an episode about Link's Awakening.
Okay.
But
they are related. They are related.
Yeah, they are related, and we did mention before they had a lot of the same staff work on both games. But back to Link's Awakening. That the Eagle Tower dungeon really messed me up as a kid, and I think it was a similar case for you.
Yeah, it was.
And it is a pretty challenging dungeon, and and both Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, I think, have fair but occasionally challenging difficulty curves. These dungeons aren't always easy. Sure. Let's see, and I mean, playing Oracle of Ages recently, that game's dungeons are way too easy at the beginning, at least, and they don't start getting interesting or challenging until you clear about the first 4, I think. Then they start getting to the level of a Link to the Past, Link's Awakening level of complexity.
Yeah, it's weird. The difficulty to Link's Awakening, so I want to be clear, it's not that the actual moment-to-moment combat that the stalwart 2D Zelda gameplay that we know and love so well, that's not what's difficult to me. or wasn't when I was a kid about Link's Awakening. It was the weird logic puzzles that were almost adventure game-esque.
Oh yeah, the machinations of the late dungeons. I
Like
would
the
say,
trade sequence stuff when I was a kid, when you have a tiny attention span, or when you were really young, like me when I was first playing Game Boy, you don't really read, and then it would be like you have to trade this very specific thing, and then you have to figure out who you have to trade it to.
and
And if you're not talking to every single person, you're not going to pick up that hint. So you could just walk around going like, "Where the hell do I take this friggin' thing?"
and unless there's something about
Love
Zelda
that.
2 that I don't know or don't remember, I think this is the first Zelda game with a major trade sequence.
I think so as well.
And they bring that back for Ocarina of Time, with the ultimate reward being the big Oron sword, and in
Yep.
Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, where the ultimate end to that is upgrading your sword from level 1 to level 2. And I think there's a bunch of trading nonsense involved in Majora's Mask, but I've only played the beginning of that game.
Yeah, I can't comment there, but that trading sequence really messed with me as a kid, and then when I finally figured it out, that was when I could really beat the game. I just remember around the time of figuring that out, it's a weird, just like mental touchstone, was also when I figured out a lot of other just random mechanics that the game explained, but I would miss, and then they're never explained again. I think it took me a little while to figure out how to dive. That I had to dive to get into the 5th dungeon when I was like 7 or whatever.
But, I mean,
Why could I get in? And finally, I was
you have to do some diving in the 4th dungeon that you get the flippers.
I know, and that's the thing. And it was like, why didn't I just think of that? I don't know. I was a dumb kid, I guess,
Okay.
or just didn't pay attention.
I think I might have had
I was
help.
tiny.
I might have had help with the trade sequence from the friend that helped me beat Eagle's Tower. Like, oh, you have to. I think what happened was I got the magnifying glass, but wasn't really sure what to do with it. And my friend told me, "Oh, there's a book. There's a book in the library, and that'll tell you how to navigate the final area." I think that's true. I don't remember exactly if she told me or not, but I think it's likely. And I remember, and years later, when I was reading things about this game, it turns out there's I don't know, 4 or 6 or 8 possible combinations of directions for the egg at the end. So you can't just it won't always be the same. But like when you when you generate a new save file, it decides at the beginning what's in that book in the library and how to navigate the egg. So you can't just you can't just avoid the side quest entirely and just check an online guide to find out how to go through the egg. There's one of a set number of random direction sequences. So
I had no idea. That's cool.
I guess you could check all 4 of them or however many there are, but you should just do the
just do the quest.
Yeah, just do the trading quest.
It's really the only quest that isn't a dungeon, real quest in that game. Well,
Sure.
I guess because that's the thing is like the logic stuff, and of course now I know that you can always just on the phone with. It's all the stuff of getting into dungeons of like, okay, getting Mara into the walrus is an obvious one, but like I said before,
Mara into the walrus is an
Bow
obvious one. Is a
Wow
sentence
in
that
the
came out of your
swamps
mouth.
to get us into the second dungeon when I was 5. Like, that was a huge breakthrough when I figured that out because it was like, oh, I get it. You're the key. I thought that I just was holding on to you because the game was being weird. Again, I had no idea what the hell was going on, and they just tell you that it's in the swamp, and I thought, okay, I need a key because I needed a key the first time, and then when I realized, oh, the dog was the key.
And
It was just such a head explosion moment. Granted, this probably all took place in the span of like a few weeks, maybe, because I only got to play on weekends. But it felt like forever because as a kid, in 5 years, those 4 weeks was a huge chunk of my life.
and there's a lot of weird things about this game that we aren't really even getting
2D
to.
sequences when you get to side scroll, which are so much fun.
Well, side scroll sequences, which are generally they're only in dungeons and only in sort of unmapped basement floors, getting from staircase to staircase. Those come back
secret pathways kind of thing.
Yeah, those come back a little bit in the Game Boy Color games, but I don't think those have like Goombas and Thwomps and to the level
and piranha plants.
Yeah, to the level of the Link's Awakening at least. And
cheap sheeps.
they do. There isn't really a unified theme connecting all 8 dungeons in this game, but one of them, I think it's the 3rd one, it's called the Key Cavern, and I didn't realize this as a kid, but it does the Zelda 1 thing, where the shape of the layout of the dungeon is the title of the dungeon.
I didn't realize that.
yeah. So the map of the key cavern looks like a key, and it's also the only dungeon, maybe in Zelda history, where you get an extra key that doesn't fit into any lock.
I didn't realize
I don't know the exact number, but it's something like there's 7 locks in the dungeon, and you get 8 keys, and that's because like towards the end there's like 4 key blocks you have to unlock all at once. So it's helpful that there's a lot of keys available. Right. But
it was a safeguard just in case someone felt like it was a little too much.
But yeah, I think maybe there's another one, but I think it's the only Zelda game where Zelda dungeon where they give you an extra key. I'd have to do research to find out if that's an error. But yeah, there's a lot of fun, weird gimmicks in Link's Awakening. I guess we've only talked about Eagle's Tower and Key Cavern, and maybe to a lesser extent Turtle Rock and the Face Shrine. But do you have a favorite dungeon in this game?
If I'm going to say a favorite, it's always going to be the first dungeon, because I've probably, again, as a kid, restarted the game so many times because I didn't know how to get into the second dungeon. So I just played the first one to death. In terms of like this time going through the actual favorite, I really like the 5th dungeon, which is the one you have to dive into.
The Catfish Maw.
I really like the Catfish Maw. I don't know why. For whatever reason, just the rhythm of playing that dungeon and how it flowed, it was just the most consistent for me. But then again, I think it's because the first half of the game I know backwards and forwards, and the second half I don't remember nearly as well, because I really only played that second half through once. And as a kid, I would restart and play through a bunch of the dungeons and then be like, I'm fine, I don't need to do this, and then come back to it months later kind of thing. And so the second half was fun to just kind of be like, oh yeah, like the Face Dungeon 6 in those shrines. I didn't remember any of that stuff. It was all relearned. Same with the 7th and 8th shrines. So those were a little bit more stressful because I didn't know what I had to do, but at the same time, I definitely think the 5th was my favorite.
And yeah, I've been doing some background Googling while you were describing the Catfish Maw. I think I was mistaken. It's not just the Key Cavern that has its layout resemble its name. Most of the dungeons in Link's Awakening do. Yeah,
they do, because I know the face has that cool little thing that I noticed.
Yeah, and Turtle Rock looks like a turtle with a head and legs and a tail. So, but that's the
and
Zelda
Eagle
1...
Tower is just the 4 tower blocks, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not true for maybe all of them. But many of them do the Zelda 1 thing where the dungeon layout resembles the dungeon name, which is a cool gimmick. I like that. But,
it's fun.
But yeah, replaying this recently, so the dungeons are pretty fresh in my mind. I think the Eagle's Tower gimmick is cool, but my childhood trauma from it means it can never be my favorite.
Yeah. That part where you have to bomb the 2 chunks of the wall and place the ball in that corridor. That was one I remember that took me a while to realize. Leave it there, and then eventually
and then there's a corridor where half of the blocks on one side are movable and the other side aren't. But it's never really communicated that you're supposed to push those aside. Was weird, and trying to think back to all of these. Turtle Rock is challenging because it has more enemies in it and more tough sort of combat sequences than other dungeons, and then the weird gimmick with that one is there's one switch in the entire dungeon that you need to get to just to get to the item at the end, and it's basically 2 secretly bombable walls, or I think 1 secretly bombable wall to get to that switch, which is hard to find unless you sort of stare at the map and realize there's one last room you have to get to. It's Turtle Rock wasn't a setback dungeon the way Eagle's Tower was, where I was playing Eagle's Tower for a year or longer, but it's a challenging one too. Right. But back to the question of my favorite, I think Catfish Maw is a good choice. I think my favorite is the 3rd one, is the Key Cavern, because you get the Pegasus boots there, which are a real fun item. And I like the gimmick of there's an extra key and more locks than like any other dungeon in the game. And also to get there, you have to help this guy Prince Richard get his 5 golden leaves at a nearby castle. I forget what it was. Rob Fenner told me this a while ago. Maybe it was on another podcast even. But that's a reference to another old Nintendo game where Prince Richard was a minor character.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Let me spend a minute Googling this.
But yeah, I mean, this playthrough was also the first time I acquired 20 seashells to get the upgraded sword. And it was weird because it happened so naturally playing the game. I didn't really feel like I had to search for them that much. And yet somehow, again, just from reminding myself of how dumb I was as a kid, I remember it being impossible for me to find them all.
The Secret Seashell quest is, I don't know. It's a pretty good collection quest for
It's
a
really
Zelda
not
game.
bad. Yeah, it's pretty simple.
I think they aren't that hard to find. I think you only need to find in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 shells, and
How do you get the blue tunic? That's the one thing I don't know. Or maybe that's just a DX version. Is that also in the...
It's only in the DX version. It's a secret dungeon in the graveyard where you do some color-themed puzzles, and at the end of the dungeon you get to choose between the red tunic, which doubles your attack power, and the blue tunic, which doubles your defense.
Interesting. I don't know.
It's worth it.
Go back and try that out.
Because I always take the red tunic.
Yeah, why would you not want to do more damage?
It's
always
basically
the glass cannon.
Yeah, always basically permanent piece of power.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
like why not? But anyway, I did find the Prince Richard reference again with background googling. There's a Game Boy game that's Japan only from 1992 called Kaeru no Tame ni Kane wa Naru, which is basically translates as "For Frog the Bell Tolls," which is similar to the Japanese translation of "For Whom the Bell Tolls." Yeah, it looks like it's a little action game starring Prince Richard, and frogs feature prominently. And the song that plays in Richard's Villa is an arrangement of the theme song of that game. Which is a cute reference that I definitely didn't get as a kid. Absolutely not.
Not even close for this guy. I did not know that was a thing at all.
But yeah,
I was confused by the talking monkey first and foremost as a kid.
Well, Kiki the Monkey also features prominently in A Link to the Past, because you need help from the monkey to get into one of the dungeons near the middle of the game. Yeah,
with the that maze. But that's the thing, is like I didn't know that, so playing that game the first time I was like, why is there this talking monkey?
And you're looking at art assets of this For Frog the Bell Tolls game. It looks like that the frog that teaches you the song of life is from that game and not Mario 2, even though it
looks like that and it felt like an homage. It's more of maybe the other.
Or it might be that the Mario 2 frog found his way to the this For Frog the Bell Tolls game and then went to Zelda Link's Awakening. But we just weren't aware of the second step in the chain. And this Prince Richard's art assets from this old Game Boy game, he has a sword and a shield and a sort of a floppy hairdo. He's kind of like an alt universe Link in a frog themed action game.
Okay.
Sure, why not? Yeah, so
I'll take it.
I don't think we're gonna do a Retro Encounter episode on For Frog the Bell Tolls anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
But it's a cool little reference.
Yeah, I also just love, again, and it's the sense of humor thing that I feel like is unique to this game. But this is such a bizarre thing. But it just made me think about it with the trade sequence, because you said we were talking about Kiki the monkey and the bananas.
Yeah.
But I love how early on, with the baby room, with the baby you have to give the doll to, if you talk to the husband, he'll be like, "Hey, I'm going to be lost in the mountains later. Look out for me." And he'll tell you that at the beginning of the game. And then when it happens, it's just like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's amazing.
That's some self-aware humor there, and this is a very self-aware Zelda game. I think it celebrates its own weirdness sort of throughout, and the humor is both explicit and occasionally wacky, but also kind of tongue-in-cheek. Like, yeah, we know this is a video game and we're getting weird. Get over it.
Oh, I had this weird dream where I was a raccoon.
I know you weren't on the episode, Chris, but when we recorded the episode from last week, the favorite Zelda episode, we talked about how certain games like Wind Waker specifically are are celebrations of Zelda weirdness, because sometimes this series,
that's what makes that game great.
Yes,
that it doesn't take itself so seriously, and it's a little bit, and then at the same time it can with its lore. Sorry, we're getting off topic again.
No. It's on topic as long as it's about Zelda. I mean, Zelda sometimes is a self-serious series with
which is fine.
Which is fine. I mean, it's an adventure game, and you're fighting monsters and rescuing a princess a lot of the time. So it has its moments of self-seriousness, like Legend, starring Tom Cruise way back in the day, which allegedly was one of the inspirations for the original Legend of Zelda's look.
Yeah, which is crazy.
But I mean, all Zelda gets real wacky, and you're helping monkeys build monkey bridges, and a personal favorite of mine is the mini game Proctor in Wind Waker, who has the sploosh sound effect.
Yeah, and look, to be fair, and you pretty much said it as well. Most Zelda games, I think, have always had that fun and kind of whimsical thing going on, because at the end of the day, they're fairies and there's magic and it's a very simple story of boy, sword, take over defeat the evil creature. And yeah, I mean, Wind Waker, I think Ocarina of Time has that kind of whimsical thing with a lot of its cast. Definitely Majora's Mask, although it gets very dark. It's just really only in some of the more recent Zeldas
Ocarina of Time does have moments of levity, but also you draw the Master Sword and then you go to the castle town and suddenly full of zombies.
But that's what I mean. It has the we have the serious story, but at the same time there is a lot of goofy stuff that goes on in that game. And a lot of characters that you talk to that are zany and bizarre and weird, and yet, they get to exist.
I haven't played every Zelda game, but the majority that I've
Neither
played...
have I. That's the Twilight Princess is the one that I think that is why a lot of people always feel like,
well, I mean,
it's not. Sometimes it's too serious, but that's really the only one that's
I think Twilight Princess is a slight overcompensation because
exactly
there was
it's a reaction to what people said at the offset of Wind Waker when they thought it was too cartoony.
But Wind Waker was very well received in general, but there was a vocal outcry saying that it was not dark enough and not the second Ocarina of Time that they wanted. And I think that Twilight
somehow
Princess
the game sold really well, but they listened to that.
No, it had critical. It had a ton of critical acclaim. Like it was getting like 90s and 95s across the board.
Oh, trust me, I know. But somehow there was this consensus that it wasn't hardcore enough, and somehow that got to Nintendo because they admitted that that's something that they remember hearing consistently about their game, that it wasn't edgy enough. It wasn't,
and Shadow
high def and
Shadow
cool.
and Darkness was definitely a subplot of Twilight Princess, and I think Twilight Princess is good. I just don't. I mean, I sort of like Wind Waker better, and
the difference is it's just not nearly as delightful and fun, and also the tie-in that Wind Waker played so wonderfully to Ocarina, which was such a important game to so many people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get into Zelda timeline stuff.
Oh God, let's not, because I remember being so excited for that Hyrule Historia, and then actually reading through it and being like, you guys had no idea what this was until you sat down to write this book.
The time travel shenanigans get bad, and I think that's false. Actually, they did have a Zelda timeline.
I know they did.
Thing that they were curating. But it
doesn't feel like it.
Let's not talk about it now, because I mean, this is supposed to be an episode about Link's Awakening, and Link's Awakening fits pretty easily.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
fits pretty easily.
A dream.
I think it's direct. I think it's supposed to be directly after A Link to the Past, but it can fit in almost anywhere on the timeline, because Link goes out on a raft to explore is enough of a guide and chapter that it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like Adol having to just go off and seek adventure.
Well, okay, Adol, he's a different age in each of the games that he takes part in. So,
I'm just saying, it's like how he just goes off for adventure. I'm not saying in comparison to all the Zelda games. I'm just saying conveniently they like to seek adventure.
Hey Nintendo, make an East Zelda crossover game for the Switch. Make it happen. It's what the fans want.
That would be tremendous. Especially if it was old school.
It's not ever going to happen. This is totally the realm of fan fiction. But I think Adol and Link are like 1A and 1B for the greatest silent protagonists with swords and shields.
Oh yeah. Especially those PSP. I know they're on Steam as well, but those PSP, Felghana, especially, I just think it's such a great game.
Yeah, well,
sorry, we're side topic.
We're going to stick to East for a second, because I think basically, like, East was always pretty good and very influential and important, but it didn't get, I don't think it became great until they did that sort of soft reboot around 2000, because when they did the East 1 and 2 remakes and then started making and then did the East 6 onwards, they tried to have the East games and their remakes relate to each other better, and I think that enhanced the series as a whole. Because like the original East 3 is pretty terrible, and East 4 had 3 different versions made by different companies, so that weren't talking to each other. So it's kind of
it got introduced to them with the PSP titles, and that was my introduction. And gotta say that was a great way to discover those games.
I got into them late as well, but like East was always good. It didn't get great and
nearly as much recognition, partially because of the platforms it was on too.
Yeah, and I would say in the 2000s with the East 1 and 2 remakes,
that's when
is the official turning point where East went from weird but good to awesome. And now I anticipate every East game hotly, and I have a copy of East 8 waiting to be played, but I'm too busy with things like Zelda Month and Retro Encounter. What's up with that?
I know. How could they get in the way?
How dare they?
Sweet East.
But anyway, I worry. I mean, if we're talking about East and Tom Cruise movies from the early 80s.
Yeah, legend. Yeah, of course. Ridley Scott.
Well, that's Ridley Scott, isn't it? And that's
he did direct that, yeah.
And that's a real weird Tim Curry role, and then maybe not one of my favorites.
Playing pretty much Satan.
Yep. He's not
talking
quite
like this the whole time.
Not quite as cuddly as he is in, say, Clue.
Yeah.
or Addams Family Reunion.
No, it's not the Home Alone 2 guy.
No. Oh right, yeah, he is. I keep forgetting he was in Home Alone 2, even though he has a fairly major role.
He's the bad guy bellhop. No, concierge guy, not bellhop. I apologize.
Yeah, no, he's above a bellhop. He's the hotel concierge, or maybe even a manager level guy. Yeah. But anyway, enough about Tim Curry. Enough about Tom Cruise. Enough about Adol Kristen. We've been talking.
Is a great game. It's a
really
great game. It's still great. It's weird and obtuse, but it's great.
I played it in 2018, and it still felt great. And I even espoused its greatness last week on a podcast, but it was mostly to deaf ears because I was the only person that voted for Link's Awakening in our.
Also, a lot of people do hate this game. A lot of people hate this game.
What assholes hate this game? Come on.
A lot of people think it's like this. It's an overappreciated kind of bastard stepchild.
Those people were never a preteen child struggling with their Game Boy, figuring out how to move that iron ball around to the marble pillars.
Figure out just how not to fall down one of those damn holes, and then have to start all over again. Yeah, that was the rage meter at maximum when I was a kid.
Like, if you hate this game, then you are a troglodyte who's upset you can't Twitch stream Game Boy.
To be fair, I didn't mean to just be negative about how could people dislike it, but
that's how I mean to be.
I know you do. I'm clarifying that while that hatred is justified, I agree that what it does interest me that there is a large group of people, or I've at least heard of a lot of people argue why it's not a good game, and it's for a lot of the reasons that we're talking here of all its weirdness. I'm not trying to be like, it's cool because it's not cool, because I think more people like this than don't. But it's just a reminder that it clearly is a little bit of an outlier, and it's just such a delightfully strange game. I don't know how else to put it. It's just so odd in the best way possible.
It's odd, but sometimes Zelda is odd, and I think Link's Awakening is just a good Zelda game.
Yes, that for sure.
And as I said before, it's not that hard to find a playable version of this nowadays, because you can find it on the 3DS shop.
And like I said, it plays wonderfully on that Virtual Console version. It's really great.
Right on.
Do it.
I probably will check sales every month until I can get this for $3 instead of $6.
And now I have to do that with the Oracle games.
Mm-hmm. I remember I got them right at the end of 2017. It was November, December when they were on sale. But Nintendo eShop sales are not quite as aggressive as Steam sales, but they happen often enough that I'm sure you won't have to wait that long.
Oh, for sure, it'll pop up again, especially with this being the last year and a half of the 3DS's push. I assume. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, well, the 3DS eShop will probably stay a long time because they aren't even shutting down the Wii eShop until the end of 2018. It's officially dead January 1st, 2019. So I think you'll be able to find the Game Boy Zelda games on the 3DS for a while.
Oh yeah, yet. For a while.
But all right, I think we're about exhausted Link's Awakening discussion.
Yes, indeed.
We both like this game a lot. There's a lot of
It's a good one.
we didn't even mention Terran and his raccoon adventures. But
No.
there's
Yeah, his little weird Tanuki his almost Tanuki suit.
and we didn't even mention like what the fish is, a magical tattooed flying whale, which might be
Yeah,
the same
giant flying whale.
which might be the same as the Ocean King in Phantom Hourglass. I'm not sure about that. I would have to
Wow.
play Phantom Hourglass to check, and that's something I'm unwilling
Yeah,
to
I've
do.
not played that game.
But there's a lot going on in Link's Awakening. It is super weird and super cool, and I think it comes from a recommendation from both of us. Sorry, Chris, don't want to put words in your mouth necessarily.
No, you're right. 100%.
Right on, okay. And I think that does it for episode 131. Thank you so much, listeners, for pulling up with all... Pulling up...
Putting up with all of our
Putting up with all of our nonsense.
shenanigans and strangeness.
We're in the middle of Zelda month right now, but we have 2 more weeks to go before it's through. One episode is going to be an exploration of Zelda traditionalism that we're not really sure what to title yet. I mean, I'm thinking maybe What is Zelda? Maybe For the Love of Zelda? I don't know. I haven't figured it all out yet.
For the love of Zelda.
Exactly. And the second episode, or I should say the last episode of Zelda Month, is going to be all about The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. And Chris, you and I will be back to talk about that game, that GBA gem, which I don't know if it's appreciated enough or underappreciated, but we can explore the semantics of Minish Cap reception at the time.
In a cool way, as I would say, a nice little tie-in to this game. It's a game that I think gets underappreciated because it wasn't developed by Nintendo. So it gets that weird stepchild effect.
Sure, well, maybe.
Again, the Capcom effect just means that people can say, well, it wasn't really a Nintendo.
Well, okay. I mean, sure, we'll save that discussion for Minish Cap. But I'm also a Capcom fanboy who loves the Oracle games, which were also developed by Capcom Flagship. So
I know. That's like that weird thing of where all 3 of them. Again, this is the dumb stuff of I'm remembering conversations when I was a kid. And so it's very possible that I just had a friend group that weirdly had that as a sticking point.
And clearly they are no longer your friend group.
Actually, it is very true. I don't speak to any of these kids.
But again, I mean, I'm a Capcom fanboy that has at times tried to defend Street Fighter V and has over 160 hours into Monster Hunter World. Which I mean, by the time this episode,
that game has taken over the world. You're not alone there.
Oh, I love that thing. I talked about this on an episode 2 months ago, but I played so much Monster Hunter on the PSP. And then became became a bit of a lapsed fan, and would even like deride Monster Hunter for its weaknesses in the intervening 7 years between playing them back in the day and the present. But now I am back on the bandwagon. I am so back. It feels like coming home. It really does.
So cool. I love it. Good time for games. Good time for games.
Great time for games.
And Link's Awakening is awesome.
Link's Awakening is awesome. But what's also awesome?
What?
Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars.
Yes, it is.
That is our video game for May for Retro Encounter. So we will have two episodes devoted to that coming next month. One of the panelists on that episode has never played the game before, so I'm very, very eager to listen to her reaction to it. But we will save that discussion for May. Listeners, if you want to reach us, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on the boards on rpgfan.com, which they aren't exactly popping like they used to be, but they're still around. Or also visit RPG Fan on Facebook, or RPG Fan.com on Twitter, or RPG Fan's Discord page, which you can find advertised on the front page of RPG Fan. Also, please review us on iTunes or Google Play, or leave a comment on either of those, however you listen to the podcast. We love feedback. We read all of our feedback. We read every email, and we respond to most of it. if
we can, we try our best.
If we can. We read everything that's directed to us, and we're pretty good about responding most of the time. And also, I mean, we're not the only podcast on RPG Fan. There's also Random Encounter, which is focused on current events and is hosted by, for many years, Rob Steinman, and from now on, Derek Heemsbergen. And we also have an RPG Fan Twitch page with streaming basically every evening, speaking as a resident of North America, evening time. And I don't know if it's every single night, every single day, but there is always something streaming on Twitch, and if you want to see what is being streamed at a given time, you should check the Twitch page and RPG Fan's front page. So, Chris, if a listener wants to get in touch with you directly, what's the best way for them to do so? Or
Best way to do so
or
would be
ways,
to,
or ways, I guess.
you can check out my work at rpgfan.com, or just find me on Twitter at Chris Gebauer. If you really want, you could go to my website, but that's not worth it. Don't do that.
Well,
Not
maybe if a television or SoundCloud producer wants
Oh, God,
your
yeah.
dulcet tones for
If
something.
you would like to pay me to do work for you, please, good Lord, get in touch. Otherwise, yeah, you could Google audiobooks and stuff like that, other stuff I work on, but only if you're interested.
You cannot find me on audiobooks or or entertainment other than this podcast. Probably for the
But-
best. But
I disagree. I need your voice on
sure.
these airwaves, my friend.
That's sweet of you. But but listeners, if you want to reach out to me, the best way to do so is probably via Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, and also at Evoker for Dogs when I want to talk about weird stuff that I'm not comfortable putting on at The Real Monsoon.
So the best stuff. Go there for
Sure.
the best stuff.
I'm also Monsoon on the RPG Fan forums and Monsoon Mike on Discord. So
Very cool, man.
I think that's about it. We both love Link's Awakening, even though this episode was not all about Link's Awakening.
No, it's about everything that Link's Awakening also made us think about.
That is a very accurate statement.
I'm trying to be weird.
Listeners, thank you. Good night.
Have a good one.